The competition at the Silverstone circuit has ended, and although it didn't deliver a race full of battles or wheel-to-wheel fights, the results have tightened the different battles in the drivers' and constructors' standings, leaving a much more open outlook for the next part of this Formula One World Championship. So, as we approach the halfway point of the season, what happened here will only increase the pressure for everyone hoping to fight for the world title in the last race of this season. Silverstone and its Grand Prix have come to an end, but for us, it's time to recount the most important highlights from round number 9 of the Formula One World Championship. Before we start revealing the events of the race, let's remember that this weekend we had a sprint format and it's time for a quick summary, but honestly, there's little to say about the mini race we had on Saturday. Hamilton had taken pole position with Antonelli in second, and the race started without major issues, featuring a couple of interesting laps with some good battles. Norris had slipped past Russell, Verstappen and Leclerc and managed to quickly secure third place at the start of the sprint. However, the tension was at the front. Hamilton held on to his pole position, but Antonelli needed 7 laps to pass him and take second place. And with this, any battle died out, as the only thing left was Russell, Verstappen and Leclerc fighting to catch up to Norris, who had a fuel problem because McLaren hadn't put in enough, and he had to manage it at the end of the race, although it didn't change his position, finishing the sprint with Antonelli winning, Hamilton in second and Lando Norris in third. Now then, the race would be a different story, but this time, pole position went to Andrea Kimi Antonelli, who was able to set a superb qualifying lap to start in the best spot for the race. But he would have the 2 Ferraris right behind him, with Leclerc in second and Hamilton in third, ready to attack Antonelli's position if the opportunity arose. However, as almost always, there were surprises before the race started, and Pierre Gasly was given a grid penalty for blocking Stroll's fast lap in qualifying. And he would start last, obviously due to the low pace of the Aston Martin, but also because there were some changes. Since Fernando Alonso stalled on the formation lap, although he was able to get going again, he had to start the Grand Prix from the pit lane. But at this point, the only question left was whether Antonelli would be able to finish the job again in the race, if Ferrari could do something to beat Mercedes, or if Russell and Verstappen would have something to say during this race weekend. With cars lined up on the starting grid, the lights would go out. And with that, the British Grand Prix would begin. Antonelli has a slight wheel spin at the start, so he gets bad traction, which both Leclerc and Hamilton take advantage of to snatch the lead from the young Italian in these first few meters, sending him down to third place. But Hamilton moved just before the lights went out, and this caused him to be given a 5-second penalty. But further back, Piastri, trying to overtake, ended up colliding with another driver, breaking his front wing. He was forced to pit to change it, losing all his chances. Meanwhile, at the front, Albon took out Oliver Bearman at the corner after the Wellington straight, and for this he would receive a penalty for causing a collision. Meanwhile, the Alpine drivers took advantage of all this chaos and made good starts to position themselves 12th and 13th in a very good start for the French team's drivers. Afterward, the race stabilized, but Leclerc's strong pace allowed him to pull away from Lewis Hamilton, who was closely pursued by Andrea Kimi Antonelli, staying right on him. At the same time, Verstappen was closing in on Russell, who simply didn't have any pace. And that's how the first laps went by, with Antonelli right on Hamilton's rear wing, until on lap 11 once again he let Hamilton use up his battery and took advantage of it to overtake him before the Copse corner, moving up to second place in a smart maneuver by the young Italian. With this, there were 4 seconds between Antonelli and Leclerc, but the Mercedes driver kept up the pace and gradually managed to reduce that gap. Meanwhile, on lap 19, Verstappen managed to overtake George Russell to move up to 4th position, but immediately after this maneuver, he went into the pits, becoming the first driver to pit for strategy in this race. Stopping much earlier than expected, in fact, Hajar would enter the pits a lap later, making it a very early stop for the Toro drivers. On lap 22, a virtual safety car briefly came out when an umbrella flew onto the track, and once it ended, the Alpines kept gaining positions, and by this point, both Gasly and Colapinto were already on the verge of the top 10 in positions 11 and 12. Both drivers on the team were showing good pace. For his part, Hamilton would enter the pits on lap 24 along with Russell, who serves his penalty and comes out behind his compatriot, but both come out behind Verstappen, who took advantage to gain positions with that early pit stop they made. Meanwhile, Leclerc enters the pits on lap 26, but Antonelli does not follow him. He stays on track, extending the stint, aiming to finish with tires in better condition and thus go for the win in the final laps. So while Antonelli stays on track with a strong pace, losing relatively little time to Leclerc, behind him Russell and Hamilton had already caught up to Verstappen's car again, and for several laps they were chasing each other without having a clear chance to overtake. Until they start battling on lap 29, Hamilton tries to overtake Russell, but Russell, using his battery, manages to maintain the gap and responds in a typical JoJo-style battle this season. On lap 31 he tries again, but the result is the same. Hamilton overtakes, but Russell manages to take the position back. Russell tries to chase Verstappen once he's back up to speed, but Verstappen never makes it easy. By the time Russell tries to overtake on lap 35, he ends up going into the pits for a second stop, bringing the battle to an end. This is because, supposedly, Russell was suffering from a slow puncture and had to stop to change that tire. During the battle on lap 29, Norris pitted. Antonelli didn't stop until lap 36, losing the lead and rejoining about 7 seconds behind Charles Leclerc. He immediately began closing the gap significantly. With an absolutely incredible pace, the gap was shrinking lap after lap at a moment when Antonelli was flying. During the chase, Hülkenberg stopped on track because of a reliability issue with his Audi. And this brings out a virtual safety car, which Verstappen takes advantage of to pit, after Hamilton had overtaken him just moments before. And on that same lap, a virtual safety car comes out and Antonelli's chase of Leclerc continues. But on lap 42, just when it looked like Kimi would sooner or later have a chance to go after the Monegasque, the young Italian's race is completely ruined. Because during the chase, while he was turning, he goes over the curb, just like he had been doing in previous laps during this chase. But at this moment, a part of the car fails. It comes loose. Meanwhile, Kimi was on the curb, causing his car to become uncontrollable and he couldn't steer. The single-seater had to be stopped and he had to go into the pits on lap 42 to get his tires changed. Then he went back out on track. But the problem was still there and he ended up being overtaken by Hadjar and Norris, with Kimi unable to even keep the car on track. Mercedes wanted to retire the car, but Kimi insisted on staying out to fight for a few potentially crucial points at season's end. He returns to the pits, Mercedes removes the part, and he exits in 10th, just ahead of Franco Colapinto, who passed Pierre Gasly after the stops. Although he improved the car's drivability, he now needed to build a 5-second gap over Colapinto to score points. Because he got a penalty for track limits after repeatedly going off while controlling the car. At first, it looked like he could manage as he pulled away from the Argentine. But on lap 48, his dreams of scoring points went straight out the window because of a situation that wasn't his fault. Well, Verstappen has a problem similar to the one he had in qualifying in Austria, and after the hangar straight, he loses the rear of the car and ends up in the gravel. With that, he's out of the Grand Prix and a safety car comes out, so with this, the gaps are neutralized, which basically meant that Kimi no longer had the chance to make up those 5 seconds, and therefore his chances of finishing in the points were automatically over. Several drivers, including Leclerc, the Racing Bulls, Bortoleto, and others, pitted during the safety car period, waiting in case there was another lap of racing. But the one who doesn't stop is Russell, who takes advantage of Hamilton's pit stop to capture second place. This could be a strategic mistake by Ferrari, but they were hoping the race would restart. With this, Russell moved up to second place with some luck, but it was uncertain if he could hold that spot after the Grand Prix restarted. This is when the race lost its excitement. Well, on lap 51, the announcement was made that the safety car would come in at the end of that lap, but when it reached the pit lane, it didn't go in. So lap 52 started, the safety car was still on track, and this automatically meant that the race was going to end under the safety car. According to the FIA, this happened because they notified that cars could unlap themselves on lap 51, the same lap the message about the safety car coming in was given. But according to the rules, the race has to be restarted 1 lap after the cars unlap themselves, and since race control took too long to give this order, it couldn't be restarted at the end of that lap, but had to be on lap 52 when it was already too late. So that's how it ended, and when they crossed the finish line, Leclerc was the winner of the British Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc earns his first win of the season, and first in 2 years, bouncing back after recent struggles. He delivered an excellent race with impressive pace, leaving no chance for others to claim victory. Who knows what would have happened without the failure in Antonelli's car, but definitely he did everything he had to do to take the victory, and his pace has been very promising when Ferrari needed it the most. Here's how the rest of the British Grand Prix top 10 finished. Russell took second place, with luck finally favoring him after it deserted him earlier this season. Third place for Hamilton, affected by the last pit stop. Fourth place for Lando Norris, with another survival race for McLaren. Fifth place for Isaac Hadjar. Sixth place for Liam Lawson. Seventh place for Arvid Lindblad. Eighth place and a great race for Gabriel Bortoleto. Ninth and a great comeback by Franco Colapinto. And closing the top 10, Gasly took the final point of the race. This Grand Prix has been terrible, no sugarcoating it. What a race! Most battles were limited by battery issues. The only real action came from the Hamilton, Verstappen and Russell group, plus Andrea Kimi Antonelli's chase of Leclerc, which fizzled out after the Italian's car failure. But in the end, not even that chase happened, and there wasn't much of the Verstappen, Hamilton and Russell battle either, which was settled relatively quickly with the pit stops, and the cherry on top was the finish under the safety car. I mean, personally, I don't mind if a race ends like that, but if it hadn't been for the FIA's slow decision making, we could have had that last lap of racing without breaking the rules. So my rating will be 3, a bad race. Only the battles saved this race a little, which once again lays bare the flaws of Formula 1 in 2026. My drivers of the day are Franco Colapinto for his impressive comeback pace, Gabriel Bortoleto for bringing Audi back to the points, and especially Charles Leclerc for his strong race and win. And despite the setback in Austria, he keeps showing that maybe Ferrari is up for a bit more and can fight Mercedes for the rest of the season. And my disappointment of the day is once again Formula 1 in general, because it wasn't just the decisions at the end of the race, but really the whole weekend was very affected, once again, by a technical regulation that on this kind of circuit is laid completely bare. The whole weekend has felt very artificial, and believe me, what we're going to see in Spa in a couple of weeks could be much worse than what we saw at Silverstone. But ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up our recap of the 2026 British Grand Prix in Formula 1. This is where I ask, what did you think of the race? Did you like it or were you disappointed? Tell me, who were your drivers of the day and biggest disappointments from the 2026 British Grand Prix in Formula 1? Let me know all your opinions in the comments section. That's all from me. Goodbye. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, turn on notifications for new uploads and share with your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter using the links in the video description and stay tuned for more content from Skyline Racing. I'll see you soon. Thank you for tuning in and see you later.